Between the 9th and 12th centuries, classical Muslim philosophers set out to map the exact mechanical reality of the human mind. They faced a specific physical gap. The human brain receives localized, temporary sensory data, a flash of light or a sudden sound, yet the mind translates that physical matter into eternal, immaterial concepts. Thinkers like Al-Kindi, Al-Farabi, Avicenna, and Averroes demanded a predictable, physically grounded reality for the soul, the nafs, refusing to leave this process to abstract theology. To bridge this gap, they adapted Aristotle's hylomorphic model, the premise of the soul acts as the organizing form of the physical body, into a rigorous, step-by-step biological pipeline. For these scholars, the philosophy of mind functioned as a systems engineering challenge designed to process raw physical inputs and output spiritual salvation. This anatomical model maps the processing of thought onto specific physical locations, grouping the internal senses within 3 distinct ventricles of the brain. This hardware creates a strict division between the external sense organs, the intake of the eyes and ears, and the internal processing nodes. As sensory data moves deeper into the brain, each faculty in the sequence acts as a discrete layer of abstraction, systematically stripping away the material husks of the perceived object. This biological system requires constant power. The heart acts as the ruling organ, providing the innate heat required to sustain the nutritive and sensory faculties. Tracking sensory data through this pipeline reveals the exact mechanics of medieval cognitive science. The internal senses function as an active assembly line, continuously refining and dematerializing physical reality until it becomes pure thought. The first node in this assembly line is the common sense, located in the front ventricle of the brain. The common sense receives discrete inputs from the external organs, color, shape, or sound, and compiles them into a single, unified, sensible object. Once compiled, that unified data packet moves to the second faculty sharing the front ventricle, the formative imagination, or khayal. Khayal acts as the mind's primary buffer, retaining the exact sensory footprint and physical dimensions of an object even after it leaves the visual field. These mechanics were defined with extreme precision. The surviving Arabic treatises treat the brain like a machine, mapping cognitive limits directly onto specific physiological organs. The front ventricle successfully formats and stores physical data, but it remains blind to meaning or context. This created a bottleneck in the original Aristotelian model. How does an organism recognize a property that has no physical shape, color, or sound? In Avicenna's thought experiment, a sheep perceives a wolf and immediately identifies danger, a relational meaning that exists beyond the visual data of gray and furry. To solve this, Avicenna added a specific upgrade to the middle ventricle, the faculty of estimation, or waham. Waham extracts non-sensible intentions, called manan. These are the invisible meanings inherent within the perceived object, separating the hostility from the fur. This faculty drives immediate instinctual reactions like fear or affection in both animals and humans. In humans, the middle ventricle also houses the cognitive faculty, or mufakida.
The cognitive faculty actively recombines, divides, and manipulates images from the imagination and intentions to form practical judgments. Avicenna's WAM engineered a bridge between raw physical perception and complex instinctual meaning, entirely without requiring a higher rational intellect. The final stage of this physical pipeline occurs in the rear ventricle, the location of memory, hafizah, and recollection, dhikr. In the Avicennian system, memory operates as a specialized drive that exclusively stores the extracted, essentialized intentions, stripped of their physical husks. The mechanic of recollection occurs when the cognitive faculty calls upon these stored intentions and recombines them with the formative imagination's images to rebuild a complete thought. But here, the biological pipeline hits a hard ceiling. No matter how refined the data becomes, it remains rooted in particular material instances. The human soul possesses a potential intellect, a pure disposition or readiness to receive universal abstract concepts. Because a mere disposition cannot actualize itself, the brain alone cannot generate universal truth. Al-Farabi and Avicenna proposed a distinctive solution. The force that actualizes human thought exists outside the human body. They identified the agent intellect, al-aql al-fa'al.
This is a separate, purely immaterial substance, effectively a cosmic server containing all forms. Functioning like the sun, it illuminates data prepared by the brain, converting the soul's potential intellect into an active, acquired intellect. In the 12th century, the Andalusian philosopher Averroes sought to streamline this architecture further. Averroes rejected Avicenna's faculty of estimation as an unnecessary biological fiction, arguing that a highly efficient imagination and memory were sufficient to process intentions. Averroes eventually redefined the material intellect as a separate eternal substance, distinct from a simple human disposition. In this paradigm, human cognition is never a closed loop. Achieving knowledge is an act of continuously downloading forms from an external cosmic reality. The ultimate purpose of this entire cognitive architecture is to achieve a state of conjunction, or ittisal, with the agent intellect. Conjunction is an active, momentary state where the boundary between the thinking subject and the universal intelligible object disappears. This mechanism dictates the stakes of human immortality, a point where Avicenna and Averroes sharply diverged. Avicenna protected the ego, maintaining that the soul is an independent substance that survives death, retaining the specific universal knowledge it acquired through the agent intellect. Averroes followed the logic to an uncompromising conclusion, a theory often termed monopsychism. For Averroes, ultimate perfection results in the total erasure of the individual self, leaving only the eternal, shared universal truths behind. The classical Islamic philosophy of mind was a highly original feat of systems integration. These scholars anchored the loftiest Platonic goals of eternal truth within a rigorously mapped, biologically grounded cognitive machine. By engineering the faculties of the soul, they proved that the path to the divine was paved with predictable mechanical logic. To systematically understand the machinery of the mind was to fulfill a divine command, an architecture built to capture the infinite.